Well, I'm Spencer.
I'm Leela.
I'm Sarah.
And we're doing
How one highway connected the city while destroying a community.
In the 1950s, Americans began buying cars in record numbers, and the amount of the automobiles on the road skyrocketed. This led to gridlock and congestion across the country. To deal with this added congestion, the National System of Interstate Highways was put into place. The National System of Interstate Highways was a network of highways that connected the major population centers across the country and created more roadways. In Minnesota, I-94 was going to be built as part of the National System of Interstate Highways. It was going to connect Minnesota, downtown St. Paul to downtown Minneapolis. It was going to go directly through the Rondo neighborhood. The Rondo neighborhood was the heart of the thriving African-American population in St. Paul. The construction was going to displace hundreds of families and rip the neighborhood in two. Still, sadly, construction was finalized and the neighborhood was split. The conflict between the Minnesota Department of Transportation and the people of Rondo ended with a fully functioning highway but a majorly divided community.
December 10th, 1954. We are facing a crisis. The amount of cars in Hennepin County have doubled in the past year. With this new dilemma, what are we going to do? Eisenhower is supposedly going to say something on this. Let's see what he does.
As the president of our nation, it is my duty to deal with the growing problem plaguing our roads. The highway system is a gigantic enterprise, but it is inadequate for our nation's growing need. Each year, over 36,000 people die and over 500,000 are injured on our current roadway system. To deal with this, I have created the National System of Interstate Highways that will work to connect 42 state capitals with a $51 billion grant. Let's hope it works.
Eisenhower set aside $39 million for the construction for Minnesota to construct the interstate through the cities. Let's just hope they work fast.
64 years later.
In the 1950s, my husband, M.J. Hoffman, was the commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Transportation. During this time, I supported him in the construction of Interstate I-94 through the Rondo neighborhood. Looking back at what he did, I don't think he made the right decision.
So, Mrs. Hoffman, now that your husband, the commissioner, has sadly passed, we have all seen the effects that the interstate has created. I want to know, what's your side of the story?
Well, I met my husband quite a long time ago, and I really did love him, but I was never very involved in his work. Still, I did hear conversation of what was happening at his job. I remember one conversation, in 1955, over the phone quite vividly.
You're planning to connect Minnesota to the rest of the country by the construction of a national interstate? That's spectacular. Not only will it help make the Twin Cities more accessible, but it will ease congestion and bring in more people. As the commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Transportation, I would be honored to take the lead on this.
About a month later, he came home, telling me all about a meeting we had earlier that day.
We've had this project for a few weeks now, and it's very important we find somewhere where we can construct the highway.
Well, in the past, we've tried to build through poor neighborhoods to get rid of poverty.
Well, that could work, but where can we build?
He was perplexed. I heard him calling into work early the next morning to talk with the engineer.
This highway thing is happening. It needs to go somewhere, but where can we build it? University Avenue, no, that won't work. There's too many businesses. It's too expensive. Summit Avenue, that won't work either. The houses, they're too expensive, too much historical value. Rondo, well, that's nearly a direct route. And there's almost fully residential, and the houses, well, they definitely aren't like Summit. That's where we'll build it.
He came home and told me all about a meeting he had later that day.
The plan is to build it from downtown St. Paul, through the Rondo neighborhood, through the Prospect Park neighborhood to downtown Minneapolis. A 13-mile stretch that connects the two biggest cities in Minnesota.
Rondo and Prospect Park were both communities with a rich history, and I've never believed that either one should have been damaged. Still, they were very similar, with the only major difference between the communities, the race of the community members. Prospect Park was a mainly white community, where Rondo was mostly black.
Yes, that is a perfect idea. Now, let's get the plans finalized.
But the plans were not finalized. Both the members of Rondo and Prospect Park stood up for their communities, but only one's voice was heard.
The people of Prospect Park have been fighting nonstop, and we're unfortunately being forced to change the plans. Luckily, the changes aren't too drastic and construction will still begin shortly. Let's just hope there's no other changes we have to make that will really inconvenience us.
When more people began questioning my husband, he hid behind the shield that Rondo was in the prime location for construction and that it was riddled with poverty. This was not true. Although parts of Rondo were relatively poor, others where he planned to build were not. There were doctors, lawyers, so many middle-class families, but it didn't matter. Construction would still take place.
We have a corner store, we have a barber shop up the street, we have a supply shop down the street, we have dentist offices, doctor's offices, and repair shops. A total community of support and safety.
Neither my husband nor anyone else in a position of power would listen to what the people of Rondo had to say. The people of Rondo tried so hard to fight for their community, and very few people listened. But one person did listen, and he tried to create an alternate route. His name was George Harold.
I have a route that would work perfectly. You would head north on St. Anthony, along the railroad tracks, and it would cause minimal destruction.
It was called the Northern Route. But unfortunately, my husband and many others in a position of power did not agree.
Of course, he's for it. George Harold is someone who does not want to have cars or highways be the centralized part of our society. But that's where we're heading as a nation. Rondo gives us a direct path. Building along St. Anthony railroad tracks will be a lot smaller and won't be big enough for what we need. Rondo allows us to do that, and that's where we're building.
But think about the families.
Yes, the families of Rondo are important, but a direct route and one that's big enough, that's what really matters right now.
It didn't matter what the people of Rondo had to say. They tried so hard to fight for the communities, and no one listened.
Well, back to the highway. What was it like as construction began?
The Minnesota Department of Transportation concluded on the plans in 1956, and construction began soon after. Rondo was torn in two.
Do you know what the impact was like on the people of Rondo?
The immediate impact was astonishing. Thousands of people, hundreds of families, were ripped from their homes where some had been living for generations. An entire, strong-knit, close community was ripped apart. I remember once when a woman from Rondo came and tried to tell my husband her story. It was completely devastating to hear what she said.
We have nowhere to go. Rondo was a neighborhood distant from the white ones. By ripping us from our homes and communities, you are putting us into a world segregated by race. It is known that the majority of the real estate agency is prejudiced against people of color, which will make it nearly impossible for us to find anywhere else to go. Before there was Interstate 94, there was Rondo. Now we have no home, no community, and nowhere else to go.
It was then when I began to realize what an impact the highway had on so many people. The so many innocent families that were ripped from their homes and forced to be silent. But I felt it was too late to do anything.
Yes, but it is true. A lot of good did come from it.
Yes, indeed there was, with the highway enabling thousands of people to get from their homes to work and back. It connects Minnesota with the entire country as a way to travel from Minnesota to nearly anywhere in the nation. I remember when construction finished, my husband would always come home so excited.
People question me building it through Rondo, but I'm glad I did. With each coming day, new people are coming into Minnesota. Congestion is easing, and the Twin Cities are becoming more accessible. I'm glad I built it through Rondo. It couldn't have gone any better.
As time passed, more people began to realize what had happened to the members of Rondo were unfair. The political environment at the time did not value what the members of Rondo had to say, no matter how much they fought for their community. But after time passed, people finally realized what had happened was unjust.
Did your husband ever express regret in his decision?
They did not believe themselves racist, but there was a mask of institutionalized racism. They knew the highway would be a success, and they knew no one would stop construction.
Do you know of any actions taken by the department to apologize destruction that I-94 caused?
Yes, indeed I do. On July 17, 2015, the St. Paul Mayor and the Department of Transportation unofficially apologized for the destruction of I-94 and the displacement of Rondo's members. But many felt it was not enough. The people of Rondo are still trying to reconnect the neighborhood and restore the sense of community.
Here are the plans for new walking bridges and coupled land bridges. That'll be 2 full blocks of land covering I-94. It'll help connect Rondo and make it into the community it once was. Although it's nowhere near perfect, at least it's a start.
And it's so sad that things like this have happened before. In New York, North Carolina, Philadelphia, even in other parts of Minnesota.
Well, it's great to see that things like this are coming to an end, wouldn't you say?
Unfortunately, they're not. All around the country, poor communities, especially homes to the ones that are home to racial minorities and people of color, are still the most common target when government-funded operations and roadways are being put into place.
Although over 50 years ago, it feels like yesterday. The day that I found out my home was going to be taken away from me. The place where I grew up. The place where my father grew up. The place where my father's father grew up. And still, things like this are happening to this day. Poor communities are still an often target for government construction and other things. They tried to bury us, but we are seeds. No matter where they cut down our community, we will just sprout somewhere else. Although the highway has caused a lot of good by connecting cities and having more people attract, it still tore up our community and my family.